Welcome to the Great Distraction.
Welcome back again, everyone. This is The Great Distraction, and today the topic of discussion is part of our sex series. And in particular, it's on art versus porn. My name is Ben, and with me today are my co-host Thomas.
That's me.
And Glenn.
Hello, folks.
Thank you for joining us. The Great Distraction is a podcast that focuses on a vast and random range of topics, and we hope that each episode leaves you with, if nothing else, a little something to ponder. As always, we'd love to hear from you. Questions, comments, and topic suggestions are always welcome. You can contact us on Facebook or by email at greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com. .com.
Net.
.net, that's back in the day, man.
Really?
.net's still a programming language.
Really?
Yeah.
It's still out. It's like .net 3 is on its way out, I heard. I was overheard a
Do you
conversation.
have an email that ends with SBC Global?
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. You're talking about .net, the domain. Oh, okay, my bad. I'm thinking of visual.net, the
Right.
Visual Studio.net. No.
my God.
My bad. Wow. Okay, see why we don't talk about that kind of crap?
We can't keep a conversation going at all.
Nope.
None of us know what we're talking about. We don't know.
Ever.
We don't know what we're talking
This
about.
whole show's about not talking about stuff.
It really is.
It's a show about nothing. For all the Seinfeld
So he
fans.
becomes your butler.
The butler. Yeah, no. Anyway, before we get off topic, before we get on topic,
What? Oh, what?
the
Let's
lines
not lose our lips here. We're talking about porn.
and art.
Oh shit.
You might not have thought they'd gone together, but they do.
They do.
Or they don't. We'll see as the conversation progresses. The times they are changing, and the lines are skewing on this topic discussion comparison between the two. And as we approach a more sexually open society here in the U.S., allowing content of a more sexual nature on things like television is varying in what is considered acceptable, what is allowed. More than that, we have new situations wherein, for example, using the TV example, television networks, they don't even have control over content anymore. Think about things like Netflix or Hulu or YouTube TV or Sony View, whatever one you use, right? Pick a flavor. Those entities make their own content and they display it to whomever will watch it. There's no, they might have their own censorship built in, but it is not the same censorship that we had 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever, when there were television networks controlling this information. And those television networks had departments that were deciding what was acceptable to be shown, specifically, in this case, with respect to what type of sexual activity was shown. We are also coming into a society where it is more common to hear open discussion on sexual orientation and gender identification. That stuff is wonderful that it's opening the doors for people to be more comfortable in themselves, but as side effects, not really a but, and as a side effect, that is also putting those ideas in more people's heads and making sex in general something that's more openly talked about, even for reasons other than sexual orientation and gender identification. And if you haven't heard our episodes on those, we have one on each where we kind of go into that stuff. It's very, very interesting. If you don't know about it or you're trying to remain ignorant of it, you probably shouldn't. Another thing in the media we're getting a lot of. Sex tapes. Holy crap, dude.
That's the way to start a career.
Dude, I was just going to say, careers are started nowadays on sex tapes. Extremely famous
Kim
people.
Kardashian
That's a great example.
Nobody knew who she was.
No.
Until that dong got flopped on her face.
One sex tape. And if you've ever seen that particular sex tape, because that's
Which I
the one
haven't.
when you, okay, I have. It is so fake. Now, like the acts are real, but you can tell that it was totally staged for being
publicity.
Yeah, for publicity. I mean, they knew they were recording. They knew that they were like showing off to the camera. She's
They were like, we saw that Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson thing did for you guys.
There you go.
We're going to
yeah,
give it a shot.
Exactly. So there's another one that, of course, Pamela Anderson was already. Well, those two were already way famous, but nevertheless, it certainly didn't hurt their career when that happened, right? So yeah, sex tapes are being released more often and are being openly discussed in the media. You're turning on the news and you're hearing about the latest sex tape. Well, your kids are hearing about that too, and everybody else is hearing about it. Everybody's going to work talking about it, and everybody's talking about it in their homes. That, among other things, also, for lack of a better term, desensitizes us to sex and what would have been called pornography before is now considered is now bundled into the average sex topic and discussed more openly. There are also other types of movements going on. Free the nipple movement. It's if you're not familiar with the free the nipple movement,
You should get on board.
Yes. If you are a man, you can walk around with your shirt off. If you are a female, it's usually illegal to walk around with your shirt off unless you have pasties over your nipple. So it's like
Indecent exposure.
Indecent exposure, exactly. So really, the nipple on the female body is the problem, apparently, with the law. So they have a movement to say, wait a minute.
That's the gray line, or as we call it, the areola.
Well, it's the areola on both.
That's true.
But it's the areola, you're right. It's not really the nipple because they want the whole thing covered, right? Anyway, so that whole movement is being considered in various entities and locations, and that type of stuff changes our definition, perception, opinion, all those things on what is art and what is porn. If you go to a time when even showing girls showing too much skin on her arm, that was considered revealing and erotic. Now you fast forward to now we want to be okay with showing the entire topless female.
Oh, dental floss bikinis.
Yeah, like the Borat one.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, that's not Borat. What was that other movie he did that was terrible?
The other terrible one.
The other terrible. Borat was kind of funny. The other one I did not like at all. The one that came out after. But anyway, Nevertheless, yes, showing more does lend to changing the viewpoints on what we're talking about here, art versus pornography, within society. And as we continue becoming more open-minded with sexual displays, what we deem art and pornography is changing. Now, there was a, let me see, where the hell did I write? A senior lecturer from the University of Kent wrote a paper in 2012. And his name was, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Han Maes, I guess is how you would say it, M-A-E-S, Han, H-A-N. Anyway, his paper was titled, "Who Says Pornography Can't Be Art?" Well, I didn't say that. I don't think Thomas and Glenn did, but nevertheless.
I might have made a point about that earlier in our conversations.
All right. Okay, so that's the title of his article. And he lays out 4 major theories and then kind of argues against them in the paper. I did not record his arguments into it because I did not read the whole paper. I just read a synopsis of what the 4 major theories were. And I appreciated this, and hopefully you'll understand why I chose this particular angle or that this guy wrote down, because it's kind of cool. I felt like it kind of covered everything. So, number 1, pornography is sexually explicit, where art is not. His quote, "Art reveals in concealing, whereas pornography conceals in revealing." Thought that was kind of cool. Something that's a mental munchie right there. So art shows what it wants to say by making you look for it, in a sense. In its complexity, you have to analyze and pick apart what the artist might be wanting to represent in the piece that they made. Whereas pornography conceals its point, if it has one. It could just be for blatant terms of sexuality. If it has an agenda, it conceals it in the ruse that it is revealing what you don't normally see. I.e., wow, we don't normally see people have sex. This thing is showing everything right here. But is there an underlying message? Now, again, most of the time with pornography...
Well, yeah, the message is the plumbing was backed up and she had to call the plumber.
Brutal. Most of the time, that is the message. Sometimes pornography...
The message is if you're married out there, guys, don't let your wife hire a plumber if you're not home.
That's right. Or anybody to come in and fix the cable.
Yeah.
Because those seem
or
to
the
be
pool guy.
Yeah, those seem to be the common the common porn basis.
Cable guy, pool guy, plumber.
Yeah. Yeah. Number 2. Pornography is exploitative, vulgar, immoral, and ultimately harmful, where art is not. Now, there are always exceptions to these rules.
Those sound like opinions to me.
Exactly. But he notes that there are many cases where the subjects of some very famous artists, such as Rodin or Picasso.
I mean, Rodin.
Yeah, okay. And Picasso had their lives ruined after posing nude for the sake of building those artists' careers. I mean, think about that. Nowadays, a upstanding woman in maybe performing arts or music or pretty much any famous woman, the minute you take your clothes off, everything changes. Your career could die. More than likely, it seems that it dies these days.
A-list to D-list.
Yeah, I mean, if you were...
Until Quentin Tarantino put you in a movie.
Unless you started your career showing it all off, like in the case of the Kardashians, you were never an upstanding citizen to begin with. You're just famous now for whatever reasons, the best of America. Number 3.
That's a mild way of putting it.
Right. Number 3. Pornography is one-dimensional. Sans artistic merit, as the pornographer's sole intent is sexual arousal. Pornography is an industry and its products mass-produced commodities. Now, he does note that, of course, this ignores the commercial nature of the art world and that some pornography does have a complex agenda. But, as we alluded to in the last one, a majority of the time, pornography is to sell sex and sexually related things. And that's generally its only agenda. Whereas art could have any number of agendas.
Now, where would like a homemade movie fall in that category?
Amateur porn?
Amateur porn, not something that you're distributing, not something that anybody else is seeing, but something that you and your partner are making for your own.
So I think all of this only is with respect to stuff that is viewed by the public, consumed by the public.
Okay.
Because... Well, hold on, man. Let me think about that because that might expand into something different there.
Because in my mind,
it
that's
is
an
still
artistic
art. Yes,
expression.
absolutely. You could be doing a painting in your garage on pastel and on canvas with pastel. That is still art. Okay, here's the problem then. Because what we're talking about and what we're questioning is in the eye of the beholder. Because the perception of what is art and porn is by the beholder. So if you had a bunch of buddies over who thought that you and your girlfriend banging in this certain way was artistic, then it is artistic by those viewers. But if you put it out to the masses, you're going to find people on both sides, right? So I mean, maybe, I guess the answer to that would be that actually doesn't matter because if you and your girlfriend found that it was artistic and you were the only two watching it, then it's art. Because you're the only two viewing it, Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What do you think? Thomas?
I agree. I was kind of letting you finish that because I mean I think it kind of goes back to that, and I think one of the biggest problems we've had with like porn is, well, who says it's porn?
Yeah, who defines it as porn?
What regulating government puts a restriction on the content of something for the general public?
Well, so you mentioned government. I don't think they're. I don't know that. I guess
we got
can't.
an FCC that monitors radio.
There you go. That's what it is. Yeah, you're right.
People that monitor television.
So
and
do those people monitor things like Hulu and Netflix?
Well, those are paid services or memberships.
So then does the FCC again? I don't know this. I'm not being facetious. I really don't know. Does FCC manage things that like AMC put on the cable channels? Like AMC.
If it's released to the general public without a membership,
but it's a paid service to have. You can't have AMC without paying for it somehow.
Well, then
that's like Walking Dead, right?
They wouldn't be regulating it then.
So if AMC
public broadcast, yes,
exactly.
Okay, so those private channels,
specialty.
A service like a content service like Hulu,
which
Netflix
I guess is
whatever.
why the cable companies can play porn, right? They
Absolutely,
have porn channels. I think you have to pay for them separately or whatever, but they
Cineflix.
have them.
Yeah.
Right.
Skineflix.
There you go. Okay, number 4. This is the last one. Prescribed response. Indeed, the fact that we speak of consuming pornography and of appreciating art indicates that there is a fundamental difference in how we are meant to engage with both kinds of representation. That was a quote from Han Mays. Yeah, I mean, I thought that was pretty valid. Nobody ever says well, damn, now to say it out loud,
Right.
hold on.
Say it
You
again.
appreciate art. Okay, sure. I get that. Like you appreciate a fine wine, so to speak, right? Tastes like grape juice to me, but okay. You
Tastes like
consume porn. But I don't like that.
What do
now
you
that I read
mean?
it.
Well, but I don't think you consume
No, it's
porn.
No, but so the general way, I think what he's getting at here is the general way you describe the activity is that art is appreciated, pornography is consumed.
So like you use it for another end. It's like it's a tool for your own.
I think the way I interpreted this is that he's more that he's referring to it as a written word. If you say that you're going to watch porn in a document, typically they reference it as consuming porn. If you say that you're going to view art, a lot of times it's appreciate art. I think he's trying to play that angle. Like I see what you guys are right now. Now that I think about it and say it out loud, when I was writing these notes out or whatever, it made much more sense to see it written. But when you say it, that's to say that one does not appreciate porn. Hey,
I mean,
Well-
I've seen some porn that you're like, wow, that is a really, really well shot scene.
Yep.
I mean, they're
and that
damn,
is
how'd
a
you get
nice
that angle?
ass.
Right?
I mean, so yeah, is that not appreciate now?
Well, from a cinematographer's point of view, that's art.
Yeah. So now that I say this out loud, I suppose porn could be appreciated the same way art can be appreciated. Again, depending on the eye of the beholder.
It's eye of the beholder, and it's also like you had mentioned a little bit about
eye of the tiger?
Not yet, but you had sort of alluded to when we were talking about the perception of something. In an artistic statement, a lot of times artists have used images that were maybe what normal people would consider pornographic to either get your attention,
Yeah, the wow factor.
or a wow factor, or to make a statement, or just to make you uncomfortable. I know lots of artists that produce art that makes people uncomfortable because they want you to question things. So it's used in that manner. But
As a matter of fact, now that you mention that, I've heard of art exhibits where they will start you off by viewing things that are shocking to get your mind in a place where you're like, kind of desensitize you to either other things or just to hit you with the unexpected and then put you in a mental place where you're like, damn, what the hell else are we going to see in the rest of this exhibit? Like, this is weird. And then all of a sudden it's more conventional art or it's, whatever.
or maybe it puts you in a different frame of mind where you're a different
exactly.
headspace where you're
Exactly.
kind of
Yeah, and so that wow factor can shock you out of your whatever you walked in the door with because you weren't expecting that. They'll show you a dead baby or some shit. And like, whoa,
Well,
whoa, whoa.
I just remember, when I first started, trying to sell art and do work in galleries and stuff, going to a couple shows, art shows, and a couple of, and it was in LA, and there was a couple of paintings that were basically this painting of a vagina. And I remember, being in the gallery and looking around and stuff, and I was like, I felt a little uncomfortable looking at it just because of my cultural upbringing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I shouldn't be looking at a photo of a vagina.
Yeah.
That's the
your eyes, Thomas.
Christian America that we've grown up in. Yeah. And it was strange to me because I'm sitting there and I felt a little uncomfortable, and I thought maybe that's what this artist wanted me to do, was to
make you uncomfortable.
to make me uncomfortable so that I could confront that feeling. Yeah. And then I looked over and there's this old lady looking at it like the primer, the most normal like art viewing old lady you would ever see. She's holding the wine. She's looking at it. I'm like, me and this old lady are looking at a picture of a vagina.
Was it a picture or a painting?
It was a painting. I was just like, I'm looking over and she's like, making all the sounds of the typical art enthusiast with her wine. And
I like the use of pinks and maroon shading here.
I sort of wanted to have a conversation with her, but I was like, let me get the fuck out of here.
So the discomfort won in that scene.
It did. And it wasn't the painting that made me the discomfort. It was the old lady next to me.
It was your viewing companions.
Maybe. I don't know.
Now,
there's a lot of psychology there to look at, buddy.
If you saw that painting in a group of friends or people that you are already associated with, would it have sparked a conversation and not been that awkward situation? Or is it merely the presence of something presented that's usually hidden with a stranger?
And maybe that's what the artist was trying to do the whole time.
Absolutely. There's all kinds of different angles they could have been taken with that.
But to answer your question, if I was with people that I was more comfortable with, seeing an image out of place, like a vagina in public, because that would be out of place to the normal day, I wouldn't have felt as uncomfortable. But being near a stranger, especially an older lady, because I grew up in an era where we respect our older generation and, grandmas and
You don't listen to
grandpas,
hip-hop in front
I
of
give
them?
them a lot of respect, and I do things in a respectful manner. So to me, it did kind of like clash with a lot of things, like you were saying earlier, Ben.
Yeah, but what's interesting is you didn't do anything. So but the interesting part is that it manifested itself in your mind that you had done something disrespectful to an elderly lady who's
Right.
standing next to you when you didn't do anything.
Absolutely.
You walked past and looked at it.
And that's the brainwashing.
That's right.
Coming back up
that's
that
your
we've talked
impure
about.
thoughts.
Yes. Right.
Holy shit,
And we've
Thomas.
talked about this before. It's like no matter how much of you is you.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
a prime example of how much is you. That didn't matter at all. That to me, it wasn't pornographic.
Yeah.
I thought it was odd that it was a painting of a vagina. I was like, I don't know. There seems like there's lots of other things to paint. But if that's your subject matter, that's your subject
I've
matter.
never found a painting or depiction of a vagina that I thought was anything nice at all. Like, it's just like, okay, what? It's like the wow factor that they go after, to me, kills the art for it. It's like, I think you were just going
Ben
for the
doesn't
wow
like looking at vaginas.
I don't like artistic...
That's what I'm hearing here.
I don't like artistic representations of vaginas. I've never really seen an artistic representation of a penis, so I don't know how I feel about that one. But
Really?
I don't think so, no.
You've never drawn a dick on somebody's face with a Sharpie?
I would not call that an artistic endeavor.
Is that not art?
I don't...
It's an expression.
I've never drawn a penis on someone's face either. Nevertheless, I've never found a piece of art that was a representation or representative of a vagina that I thought was a
Okay.
good piece of art.
Okay, so I'll throw this in, interject this in.
do
So
it.
when I was living in LA, one of my best friends was assistant curator for the Erotica Museum.
No shit.
And so I used to go to a lot of exhibits at the Erotica Museum
cool.
in LA. And it was amazing. It was super cool. And the people were so nice and friendly and welcoming. It was
Come
so
sit by me,
bizarre to
little
me
boy.
because you're going to this exhibit and it's nothing but, to the average Christian American, it was probably nothing but porn. But they were amazing artistic photos, paintings, sculptures, development of products that were used as displays of how we've evolved through sex in general. The Erotica Museum has a lot of really good exhibits that go through tons of subjects. And I thought it was, wow, this is really cool. And I felt like, I remember being there the first time and feeling like, you know what, I feel like I'm officially an adult because I'm willing to look at this and I see this and I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this being an exhibit. But you would never see that at a regular museum, and you had to be 18 to get in, and you had to buy a ticket.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of it was an interesting experience to be there. But like I said, and it's just, and I've said this before, the most weirdest, freakiest, craziest people you ever meet usually are the nicest folks. And people who are open-minded to that were some of the nicest, easiest to talk to people I've ever been around in public.
I think that's the key term right there, is that you became more open-minded, not necessarily became an adult, because there are plenty of adults that are closed-minded beyond belief.
I was searching for an
No,
expression.
I got you. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Yeah. Let's move... Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to add something?
Nope.
Let's move into, since you just brought up photography, that's one of the things we were talking about here. Let's move up into how this battle here directly affects certain mediums of art, things like photography, video, movies, stuff like that. We'll start with photography. Since we already were talking about it there, one of my things I've always noticed with photography and the questions that come up with respect to whether or not a certain image or picture is porn or art, is that photography that is of this questionable nature always seems to, at least in my perception, and you guys fill in if you've found it to be different for you, always seems to be skewed towards males, depicting female form in the pictures. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think in general, probably for as long as humans have been around, we've obviously perceived the female form as more of an artistic.
Yeah. I think even females look at it that way too.
Oh, absolutely, and that's where beauty or sex
it's the definition of, right?
It comes from the woman. It's not the man, and that goes into the psychology of how each of the sexes view each other. A woman doesn't look at a viable male mate because he's necessarily got a nicer butt,
Yeah.
or bigger pecs or whatever, but a man will.
Yeah.
A man absolutely will look at two prospective dates and go, "Oh, she's got nicer boobs."
We look at the tail feathers.
Yeah, we look at tail feathers. So I think that's been ingrained in us forever. So the usage of the female form, and you can go back as far back in art as you ever want to go, or culture, or
since the very first yes.
anything, the Greeks, the Romans, whatever,
Yeah.
and they've always used the female form because it's the most beautiful, curvaceous, shapely definition of what we see as sex. And I think that goes back to the origin of women and being able to give birth and the whole life experience.
Yeah. And usually in these photographic, again, we're kind of sticking with photographic, but this one definitely leaks into other artistic mediums like sculptures and paintings and whatever. Usually we never seem to see, because that crosses a line that's existed for a long time, a vagina represented in a female form. Now there is, like we were just talking about, strongly vaginal-based art, which is like flat out, no, that's not a flower, that's a vagina. And that's all the art piece is, right? That's a strong focus for whatever purpose they were going for, but that's what they were going for, was just that. But typically when you see nude pictures of nude models and poses and whatever, usually the vagina is hidden. So much so, we've talked about this before now, how much of you is you, right? We're going to go back to that. So much so that mass media entities, like Playboy, for example, and quite a few other soft-core movie producers, magazines, since we're just talking about pictures, posters, calendars, whatever, found a way to get past the censorship control of showing a vagina by remanufacturing the look of a vagina. If you remember from that How Much of You Is You episode, I discussed that I grew up.
They changed the identity.
Yeah, they post-process and edit. They photo edited what the girls' vaginas look like, and they push that out. All of a sudden, you have a generation of people growing up who think vaginas look entirely different than a majority of them do, right? So in order to get past this limitation, they actually went as far as to redefine the human body in a representative format, which looks real, and push that out. That's definitely
But do you think that was their way of blurring the line or getting away with something?
That was their way of getting away with something. But my point is that anything you push out to the masses changes the mindset of the society, and therefore skews the line or shifts the line between what is art and what is porn. I'll spell this out a little. Okay, let's spell this out a little quicker, because I know I was a little ambiguous with these last few statements. They being the censorship entities, whoever that may be for print media, in this case for magazines, right? They have said no vaginas, or you'll be considered a porn magazine. We won't let you into certain. Again, you should listen to our How Much of Me, or I wish I would have written down the episode. But anyway, these entities, censorship entities, have said you will not show a vagina because showing a vagina is pornographic. You will not be allowed to be on Barnes and Noble's shelves or whoever, Borders books, or whoever the hell they want to get into. And the magazine's like, no, we want to be everywhere. That's more reaching more people. We'll sell more magazines. No. Okay. We won't show the vagina. Okay, wait. What part or how much of the vagina can we show to be considered pornographic? Well, inner labia. We don't want to see inner labia. That's too aggressive. That's too sexually aggressive in nature. It's it's pornographic. So they came back and said, well, hold on a second. Either they found a model in the first place. I don't know how this started. Either they found a model or they went through and they edited it anyway. They ended up just editing everybody anyway. Wait a second. Take a look at this vagina with no inner labia. Just nice little bubble and slit, whatever. That's a vagina that we're going to print. What do you guys feel about that? Oh, well, that's not so sexually aggressive. So okay, yeah, you can go ahead and do that.
So that's a loophole.
They found a loophole. But what they pushed out ended up changing the perception of what a vagina, of what a model, of what a model's vagina looks like to society. How has that changed the rest of it? Well, it's snowballed into labiaplasty surgery. So there's cosmetic surgery to make your vagina look like that. Some girls are born like that too. But nevertheless, that has shifted people's opinions of art and porn. So now you have pictures floating around that Playboy in particular, I don't mean to pick on Playboy because there's other
They're the
magazines
ones
that do this too.
yeah.
Yeah, but they're the ones that got big. That is art, showing this beautiful nude female form with a vagina that looks like this. You got this other magazine that's putting out a similar picture, but it shows a different representation of a vagina. That's porn.
Because
That's weird.
Because they're showing the inner labia.
Who knows? Yes. Okay. Yes. But I mean,
That's what.
Basically, for this example, yes. But my point is that is where how the line gets skewed. So, I mean, you're tottering on a fence here. You know, I mean, and even the slightest little thing can push you over on one side or the other, right? I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about here. If something so minor can make such a massive difference, and then snowball into society over the years, and completely change, the culture.
Well, it changed perception because I would think with a magazine like Playboy doing that, they're trying to hold on to their identity of this is art.
Yeah, and also sell magazines.
And
lots more.
Well, obviously it's to sell magazines.
Yeah.
But they had to change the perception to get around an entity to use some other way to communicate. Oh, well, this is art. Well, what's the definition? What's your definition of porn? So whoever was in charge, whatever entity that was, they said, this is my definition. Yep. The problem with that is everyone's definition is different.
Sure. Of course. But these controlling entities are the ones that define for society, what is and what is not. And that's the problem with censorship, right?
Yeah.
Let me throw this one out there to you and see what you guys think. Personally, I feel like I'm trying to figure out how to word this. Homosexual or photography that shows anything homosexual. Let me put it that way. Maybe it's just two guys kissing. I mean, maybe they have their shirts off, nothing sexual. They're just kissing, right? Imagine like a romantic laying down in bed, shirtless, and they're making out. Okay, that is the picture. I feel like that type of picture, because it is homosexual in nature, gets called pornography more often than heterosexual couple doing more in bed.
I think that's just because it's shock value for a lot of people in this country.
So you do feel that it gets a more negative attention?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not far off on that then. Go ahead, though.
Right.
Shock factor. You're right. I didn't even think about that. I just thought maybe I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking, but I just remember feeling like I know I've seen like heterosexual couples like doing way more in a picture and it not being considered porn, still art.
But if it's a gay couple,
just kissing, nothing.
Right.
They're not doing anything crazy. They're just kissing.
It's degrees of exposure.
Yeah.
Even
to the perceiver, right?
To the perceiver.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, personally, that's art to me.
It's beautiful. It can be beautiful, like
sure.
Super beautiful. There's this one picture I'll never forget. That's gorgeous. It's a black and white. It's two girls in bed, one they're kissing, and one of them's like holding their cheek, and like they're clothed. But it's just like the picture is really, really cool. Like it's just a really cool picture, and I'll never forget that. But that's lesbian porn, depending on who you ask, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you also got to remember too, in the Western culture, we are by and large a Christian.
Yeah, I understand that, and
so that's that. It becomes an issue of like, this is a Christian nation for the lack of a better term. As horrible as that may seem, that's how the United States was sort of founded. So there's all these guidelines. So that goes back to this conditioning that we've had for hundreds of years about what's good, what's bad. In a Christian world, gay, lesbian, this is all horrible things. So if you show a heterosexual couple, that's okay because it's defined in their book as natural. But anything outside of that is unnatural, so they're going to consider that porn or whatever negative response that they could give it. Yeah. And it's not agreeing with anything, but I mean, it's kind of like I said, back to the Christian nation thing.
As a matter of fact, just so you guys know, I can't really show you guys, but I found the picture online. I'm showing the guys the picture I'm thinking about.
I used to have that poster.
Yeah, it's a poster that used to have it in Dimple Records, Tower, whatever. There it is. It's
titled Kiss.
Kiss by Tanya Chalkin, if you're curious about looking it up. Chalkin, Chalkin, Tanya, Tanya. It's called Kiss. I remember the first time I saw that, and I just thought it was a really pretty picture. I mean, yes, it has a sexual nature. Yes, the girls are pretty, but honestly, the first time I saw it, I was like, God, that's fucking like, it's sensual in like a really nice way. It wasn't porn to me at all. It doesn't look like porn to me at all.
So your perception was it was more art.
So
yeah. very romantic.
Is it the erotic element that makes it porn, or is it?
It was. You know what? So now that I'm looking at it again, I can pick apart why I thought. Wait, I'm sorry. What was your question?
So would it be something with more of an erotic element that defines it as porn, or is it just
that's the
basic shock value offense?
That's again in the eyes of the beholder, though, right? Because I mean, some people might look at that and think it's sexual. Some people might look at it and think it's romantic. I mean, yeah.
But I think also in that definitive term world, penetration is pretty much always considered porn.
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk more about that, sure.
Especially in any sort of imagery.
Okay.
Let me add something else while we're still in photography, because there, and I don't know how many people will know what this is, but if you're into photography at all, you've definitely seen stuff like this if you've ever been into any type of portraiture. What they're called, and if you don't know, I'll try and describe what this means. They're called bodyscapes. And bodyscapes are typically closer up framed pictures. And I don't mean like a wooden frame around. I mean the framing of it is closer up of the human body, typically naked. And you can think of landscapes, but they call it bodyscapes because it's showing gentle curvatures, very, very close-up stuff. So like the entire frame of the image might be a girl's stomach. She's turned on her side, and it'll look like rolling hills of sand, depending on how the photo is post-processed. Or maybe it'll be like in between, like looking from the top down, in between two breasts. You can't see the nipples; you just see like these two like hills, and then the flowing stomach. It's like so people make landscapes out of people's bodies. Usually it's girls' bodies because they have these natural curves of their hips or their butt or their legs or whatever that just they're so flowing and so like calming in their curves that when you zoom in close basically and crop the photo real close, you get what's called a bodyscape. Sometimes it's difficult for these types of photographs to avoid being called pornography. Again, it still seems to lend to the same standards that as long as you don't show the vagina or you don't show the nipple, you can take a picture of any part of the girl's body you want and call it a bodyscape or whatever the hell you want to call it. And unfortunately, depends on how you look at it, I guess. Fortunately or unfortunately, your opinion provides. They're typically the female form because, again, like Thomas was saying, I mean, the female form is always the definition of beauty. But yeah, I mean, it is totally another area of photography that gets touted or,
there's
chastised.
There's also the art nudes. And because me running the photo bay in my art studio, I work with a couple photographers who do art nudes. That's all they do.
Yeah.
And, so like one of the photographers, it was there today we were working with, and he was doing projections with different colors and patterns and stuff on the human body. It was naked. She's a naked model.
Yeah. So if you've never seen that type of photography because you don't look at nude photographs or whatever, so first of all, Thomas has in his warehouse a really cool commodity that you can only have if you have a warehouse to build this in. It's called an infinity wall. And an infinity wall is, imagine a corner of a very tall warehouse. You've got, 20 feet up, 20 feet out, both sides, whatever. It could be bigger, right? And you build this rounding out into a corner so that there's no sharp corners in the room. It's all round. So when you take photographs and you use the proper lighting, it looks like an infinite wall, like there's no wall and there's no seams or ground on the bottom. This is worth a lot in the photography world for many different types of portraiture and all kinds of, even product photography. One of the things that is becoming popular in the portraiture world, and in this case specifically nude photography, is using a projector, like a movie projector, to shoot images or patterns or textures onto a human body, a naked human body. And the stuff that you can do with it is freaking
awesome.
Cool. Because not only... So I don't know how you're imagining this in your head, but what I want you to picture is imagine this infinite background, and imagine you pull the subject, being the person, in this case, let's say a nude female, about 10 feet away from the wall. And you're shooting this projected pattern. Maybe it's stripes. Imagine anything, a complex grid of stripes. And you're shooting this onto her body. When you take the picture, the subject is far enough away from the wall such that the light does not reflect back. So it's just black behind her. But her body alone in her form is covered like a skin over on her skin with this whatever you're projecting on there. It makes for some freaking sweet pictures.
It's super cool.
You can do colors. You can do. I mean, it's quickly becoming a very, very expanded area of nude photography because it's so cool. And they're doing video with it too because you can, if you're projecting an image onto the body using a projector, you can project video too. So you can do some really trippy stuff with the physical form, with the human form, and other things too, not just humans. I mean, you could project into anything,
any shape, any sculptural shape or anything. And what's kind of cool with that is when you're doing that and you have this pattern on skin. It's a super cool look in general, but you also have, with the model being further away from the wall, you have the silhouette.
Oh yeah, and the shadow cast.
The shadow. So a lot of photographers are doing an option where they're either shoot just her without the silhouette or just the silhouette without her because it's interesting as well.
There you go.
And then you can mix the two of having the image of her with all this pattern on her, and then you've got the shadow and the silhouette behind it. It's amazing photography.
That's awesome.
One of the things we were doing today in the studio was where the wall curves and it's a 90-degree curve. We were taking the projector and pushing it further back and pushing it into the curve so it actually hit both of those walls, so it was like at a 90-degree bend.
You could bend it.
So the image was bending, and she was standing on one side of the walls, and we were shooting from one side, so you basically see an infinity of this pattern wrapping around the back of her.
Oh, how cool.
That's cool.
It was
cool.
super neat, and it's just really fun to play. That's art, but I mean, a lot of people might look at that and go, "Oh, you're just shooting porn." Yeah. There's a naked girl bouncing around in there.
Yeah, that's it. So I dabbled in portraiture for a little bit. And the minute you tell anybody, I'm dabbling or considering nude photography, that's the first thing everybody you could see it in their face. Right. You're just like, you don't know anything about nude photography, do you?
Yeah.
Because I mean, some of that stuff is truly beautiful.
It is, and the art nude world is getting a lot bigger, and a lot of models really enjoy doing it because it's so unique. Yeah. And it really sets their portfolio apart when you can see the thing. And you don't have to really show anything. Yeah. I mean, when you're doing these images, you can't really see a nipple. No. You can see a shape of
it's just,
where it would be or whatever.
It's just female curvature. It's beautiful in its own, it's in its very reduced format. It's crazy.
But it's a prime example of a really cool expanding art that is really starting to take a lot more ground because of having digital things with projection and stuff like that as well, and also with digital mapping for images and stuff too.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. Yeah, we kind of went off on that one. Let's talk. Let's move into video. And when I say video, I don't mean movies. And I kind of wanted to preface this with, I kind of feel like, and maybe you guys can comment on how your perception is, what your perception is. I feel like most people don't watch video art. Okay, now
I mean,
let me give you this before. Let me give you this before. I know we're unique in this, but nevertheless, when I say video art, I mean things like if you've ever gone to Vimeo.com or you've ever watched some trippy videos on YouTube, I don't feel like people consume, or a lot of people I talk to have never even seen this type of stuff. This is not a animation for like a storytelling. This is not a movie. This is not a short. I'm talking about video for the sake of moving pictures that shows art. It doesn't do anything other than try to look beautiful. Sometimes it might have music. Most of the times it doesn't have people, but sometimes it can. And that is all that it is for. If you have ever seen the movie Samsara or Barsaka, these are probably the most famous put on Blu-ray that I know about. If you can probably just Google Samsara or sorry, Glenn's showing me a video here that we saw that was really trippy stuff. So there's all kinds of these on, just hang out on Vimeo, Vimeo.com, and you will find tons of video art.
I was just trying to show him an example of
yes.
A video art.
Yeah, I don't want to give you any specific examples, but I mean, you guys can just hang on Vimeo. You'll find all kinds of crazy stuff. Now, and you'll find some hidden gems, especially on Vimeo, because it is like people use Vimeo, I don't even know how to pronounce it damn more, but anyway, they use that website as a, like their resume. When they produce something really cool and artistic, that's where you put it. You don't get the how many cans can I shoot through with my BB gun, stupid crap that you find on YouTube. This is just for art and just for people showing off their capabilities. It's amazing. I don't know if if your only experience with online videos is YouTube, do yourself a favor.
It's more of a cinematographer's
It's
sort of a
amazing.
playground.
Some of the stuff you will find there is truly, truly beautiful. And if you can get it on your TV, through a Roku box you can, but so figure that out. Sit down and watch it on TV, dude. I mean, have a drink, have a smoke, or just do it sober, whatever. Anyway, not to plug Vimeo too much, but in that medium, that type of video art, there's no censorship. So pretty much anything goes. And that's kind of cool because that opens up a platform wherein art and porn don't really have that's only up to the interpreter.
There's not such a definitive line.
Yeah, and nobody's making that decision for you. You go there, you see a vagina, you change it. You don't like looking at it or whatever. You see a penis or something like that, you don't, whatever. Not that there's a lot of that on there, but there is some of it. It's can be considered art. It's just finding that type of video art is hard to find, where it's truly uncensored and there's nobody predefining and determining for you what you should not be allowed to see. So that's kind of cool. But I don't think there's enough of that out there, or much of that out there, rather.
I mean, it's growing dramatically, and now that there's a platform for especially cinematographers and experimental filmmakers, that one of the things about shooting film and that I learned from a lot of people when I was in LA, that is there's like any form of art, there's a learning curve where you're just willing to do anything. You just want to see what things look like. You're just playing with images, you're playing with effects, experimentation. And that's one thing I do like about that site, is it seems like it's really...
There's a lot of experimental stuff on there,
a lot of experimental stuff, and it's welcoming to people trying different things. And, and art has always pushed the boundaries between lots of social things, political things, between sex and art. I mean, art opens the door to a lot of conversation and exposes things to give a viewer the option to see something. And I think that's the thing that's most important about the cross between art and porn is okay, that again, like we've been arguing, sort of that's your definition. It's what you feel, but like any form of art or anything that we do, we have to be pushing the boundaries to just grow and create. And as we do that as a culture, I think we are sort of starting to lose some of the stigma of what is porn in a small regard. Because if you look back in even like the Western culture in 1950s, like you said before, a girl who has a skirt that shows her knees. Yeah. Oh, look at the tramp down the street. I mean, you get chastised for such a thing.
So what you're saying is education leads to open-mindedness and better understanding. Imagine that.
Imagine that. Through art. Imagine that. Yeah. Freedom of expression.
I've always felt that was the reason that higher populated areas seem to be more contain more open-minded people and move certain directions, both politically and just in general as a culture, right? Because they get exposed to more things, they get educated, and when they become that way, they become more open-minded, understanding, and grow as humans, as opposed to hiding in a dark corner where nobody gets exposed. You don't get exposed to anything, and you sit in the same traditional stand. We did an episode on tradition too, by the way, and how bad it can be.
Tradition.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what and that's a great example that the definition you just gave. Like, I tell people I think New York's one of the most amazing cities I've ever been to, because it's a place like that where you feel like people there have seen so much, they've been willing to accept so much in the direction of art or expression that they kind of just take it all in and go, you know what, this is all part of us together. Like you go to a place like New York, you can go to museums every day, 3 or 4 of them, and spend an entire week looking at different things and go from the most basic to they have their own version of an erotica museum in New York. And so you can see anything you want, and people are willing to be more open-minded about those things. That's what's kind of cool when I was in Europe about going to some of the museums in Europe. I felt like there was a definite different sort of feeling about those lines of what would be considered porn in the West versus art. And I think a lot of artists in the West have a struggle in that because we're not as open-minded as a culture as most Europeans are.
Yeah, for sure. Movies. I just had one quick point on the movies because I found this to be interesting with respect to our angle here. What passes for PG-13 now would have been R like 10 to 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Like stuff, big time.
Definitely.
And that trend is always moving in that direction. And it's crazy to think about that I mean, everybody should know that it moves in that direction. So if you continue that trend, why consider anything R or pornography now? Because it's just going to be the norm in 10 to 20 years, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think it has to give people a job, people who
really.
regulate things or make a description of
somebody's
what's this
always
or that.
trying to control somebody else's thought.
Exactly.
Yeah, big time.
And as long as there's a government entities that are being sponsored to put their opinion in there, that's
because
where
I mean,
that comes
if
from.
you think about that right now, anybody who's listening who's got kids with them in the car, around them, they raise kids, they have kids, whatever, you're sitting there thinking maybe, well, there's things I don't want my kid to see on TV. Okay, I understand that. I grew up that way too. And like, oh, I wouldn't let my kid look at, a boob on the TV. Okay, fine. But we've talked about this many times, like morality and like what right and wrong, like so many other things. It is only based on your era that you happen to exist in and your geographical location. Because in 10 years, there'll be boobs on the TV. And the parents at that time will think, because they're going to hear the same conversation from somewhere else, they will think, oh, I wouldn't let my kid see a dick. But a boob? Don't matter.
Right.
It's on the TV anyway.
It's a slow conditioning almost.
It's a desensitization.
Desensitization.
And what's worse than that, as you continue thinking there are limits to what you're going to show your kid, remember that those are not your limits. They were set by somebody else, another controlling entity that told you a boob was not okay to see on TV.
So if you actually want to have an influence of what your children are exposed to, turn the bloody TV off.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's another option too. But okay, well, it doesn't have to be TV. It could be the internet. It could be, whatever.
Regardless,
wherever the boobs are.
raise your kids. Don't let them be entertained by other outside sources.
And don't let their rationale be defined by whatever controlling entity is defining said rationale, whatever it may be.
Right.
Something along those lines.
But I mean, you can even go back into like even what we would consider curse words.
Oh, there's another example. Yes,
Look at
profanity
and,
same thing as-
and television.
yes.
I mean, sometimes I watch television. I'm like, whoa, they can say that now.
Yeah, and sometimes there was another point I wanted to try and make here was that sometimes movies are rewarded by media coverage for their sexual scenes. They do a really risque scene. The first thing some talk show, Good Morning America talk show brings on is, let's talk. And now we have so-and-so who just did this in the new movie here. And boy, tell us about that racy scene that you did with so-and-so.
What was that one? 50 Shades of Grey or something?
Oh, man, that was so stupid. Yeah,
I know, but look at all the things that happened
yes.
in there.
It was a terrible movie.
Terrible movie,
It was
but
poorly done.
it got tons. I mean, the world knows that movie
Yeah.
because of those extremes.
That's all it took was
yeah.
just... That was a shock factor, I guess.
Total shock factor.
Totally wasn't even shocking. That was just so.
It was a terrible movie.
It was
I'll go with
terrible.
you on
I
that
couldn't
one.
believe it. Everybody walked away saying, "Oh, the book was better." I don't look who they cast for.
That's what everybody always says. Even if there isn't a book.
For all the Middle America lonely housewives who enjoyed the hell out of that book.
50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah, I mean stick to the book. Your imagination was better than that movie ever could have been.
Yeah. Unless they were into those stars that were in the movie, I guess.
I don't think they were nobodies. They were just startups.
What, in 50 Shades of Grey?
Those were famous people.
Yeah, it wasn't.
I don't care. Let's go to the next.
Google it, bro.
No, I'm not doing it. Let's talk about sculptures because you guys had brought this up before we were recording. One of the things I did catch when I was doing some research for this topic that I thought was kind of cool that I did not know was that Greek athletes back in the day, hundreds of years ago, performed their athletic activities nude. I did not know this. To them and in their society, the nude form of an athlete doing whatever competitive athletic thing they were doing, activity they were doing, was almost godlike. Touted as success, power, exemplary form, all represented in this chiseled, bodied, naked human. And they would make their sculptures naked as well because their society looked at it differently. You weren't going to meet or see this athlete, probably. You would see them perform, but you weren't going to go meet them anywhere else. So seeing them naked and them, presented in such an untouchable fashion and doing something that you as the viewer would never get to do. You were never going to be a gladiator. You were never going to be I don't know what sports they had at the time, right? You were never going to do any of those things, a chariot racer or whatever they did. So that does kind of make, we do this today, right? We idolize our famous people for no damn reason. But
Yeah, I was thinking that idolizing.
yeah, they did it back then too. So they would make their sculptures of the people naked. It wasn't for pornographic. It wasn't for sexual. It wasn't for anything like that nature. The way their society viewed those people were separate from normal people. And they were naked to show off their power and their success.
But even there, I mean, being nude at that point in time was not an uncommon thing.
Yeah,
wasn't
that probably played part in it too.
Right. I mean,
Definitely.
You're naked, you're naked.
You walk around in togas, man.
Yeah, the Romans didn't worry about the Christian belief of
they
not
weren't Christians.
showing the nipples. Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
freed the
That
nipple?
sort
Damn
of
it.
thing wasn't there. And a lot of those cultures really didn't wear a lot of clothes.
Yeah.
It was based on where they lived,
Yeah.
what their climate was, and what was more fitting. But when you take it back to the Greeks and the Romans and stuff, they celebrated the human body for its strength.
Yeah, that's what it looks. That's
And
what I was reading. Yeah.
Yeah, so when you have athletes or something like that, of course, if you're going to do a sculpture of something, back then you're going to do a sculpture of what's the most, perfect example of the
Oh, yeah.
form.
And why would an athlete be the perfect example of human form?
absolutely, yeah.
I mean, it's going to be perfectly toned and muscular and all that. Yeah. Everything I'm not.
What do you call a happy Roman?
What?
What do you call a happy Roman?
What?
Gladiator.
Gladiator. Wow. Gladiator. Well, that's pornographic, Thomas.
Is
You've
it?
crossed the line.
Okay, that's your point of view.
Let's talk
it's
about
all art from here.
Let's talk about some more art.
All right.
Animation.
Ooh.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So this is something I don't know much about, but I'm recently been
I don't
hearing
either.
and learning
but
more
yeah,
about this.
It is definitely moving its way west into America. There is a lot more. I hear a lot more common people I know who have kids that their kids are heavily into anime. There's all kinds of shows now popping up that weren't even available to us in America. I remember when I was young, you had to figure out you had to know somebody in China or Japan that would send you stuff and you could watch it on the DVDs they mailed you or whatever, right? I mean, it was really tough to get that stuff, right? Nowadays, the internet and Netflix bringing stuff over, and hell, even Sony's bringing stuff over, right?
But what is? There's another term though.
Hentai is probably
hentai.
what you're referring to, and hentai is animated porn.
Hentai.
Yeah, typically hentai is quite literally just for the sake of porn, but this is drawn stuff or animated stuff, whatever. So it is art, in how it's created.
It's all hand drawn. I mean, well, usually.
Yeah, there's computer generated stuff too, sure.
But yeah, no, it was done in an artistic fashion, but it is consumed like porn in a lot of.
And there is art hentai too.
Now, is that in Asian cultures primarily? Because you have to remember, in a lot of Asian cultures,
you can go on.
There's definitions of porn showing a woman is
it's illegal.
Is
you can't show genitalia.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they a lot of times.
So is this something that they came up with to express porn?
Yes, but a lot of times there's mosaics over the genitalia as well, even in hentai, even in animated porn.
Oh, really?
Yes. And by the way, it is also big. It's big here in America now too. You can go to Pornhub and there's a whole hentai sections. So I mean, this is moved over here now.
By the way, hentai translates to pervert in
Does
Japanese.
it really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Nice.
How terrible. They even make the media, they make you feel bad even about the name of the media. That's fucked up. Well,
Wow.
wait, that gives a great example of the oppressive nature that has created things like hentai. People, so if you've never heard of this before, you might be thinking, who the fuck gets off on cartoons? Okay, hold on a second. They can't make real porn. They cannot make real porn with real people.
Yeah,
It's
that's
illegal.
what I'm saying.
So they come up with animation. Animation starts getting censored. So all of a sudden they got to put mosaics over the animation. Can't even see cartoon dicks. That's what we're getting at.
What's the
here.
world coming to? You
What's the
can't
world
even see a
coming to?
cartoon dick.
Now, the reason I bring this up is because we were talking about, well, obviously it's related to the topic, but we were talking about before we started recording one that the first time I heard about it, I was like, oh, WTF? Tentacle porn is a thing. Tentacle porn. Now, if you haven't heard this before, just use your imagination. Yes, people, it's tentacles like octopi or Squidward. Think about that the next time you think of Squidward. Squid porn, tentacle porn, using tentacles from sea life in porn. Think about that on your boob.
Or other places.
Or your dick, whatever you got. Here's the thing. When you, at first blush, that sounds ridiculous. I mean, who the hell would watch that? When you oppress people, crazy shit comes out of their heads and crazy stuff manifests itself, especially when you repress human nature. I mean, we've seen examples.
Like sexual desire.
Yeah, we've seen examples of what it's done to religious people for years. Make them feel bad about their sexual needs and desires, and they basically go nuts. And they do all kinds of dumb
touching altar
shit.
boys.
Yeah, well, fuck. Without getting into specific examples, yes, they do all kinds of crazy stuff. Repressing, ignoring, fighting, not accepting your sexuality or any of your other human needs. Like, try and stop eating for a couple days. See what happens to you. You ever heard of hangry? There's a reason we get that way. You cannot fight humanity, the human condition, for better or worse. And believe me, I know I suffer from it as well. You will suffer from. That's why they call it suffering from the human condition. When you try to oppress a people, a whole people, you get, well, let's see. They sneak past whatever it is they can sneak past.
Well, they have to have a way to express this desire.
That's right.
This inner
and we have to have a way to consume it as well.
Yeah.
So if they won't let you make porn, they draw porn. If they won't let you draw porn, then you make weirder porn that is acceptable. Another loophole, like Playboy in the vagina. You have to find something that's acceptable. So, as the expression came about in these Asian cultures, somehow, this part I don't know, somehow that manifested itself mixing sea life and people in porn.
This is so crazy to me, and I know nothing about it.
It could have been anything. It probably has manifested itself in
From
other things
yeah.
into other things. So, okay, wait, I can't have a guy-girl have sex in animation. What about a girl and a zucchini? I mean, I don't know where. So now they're gonna make animation with a zucchini and a girl, or some other crazy shit that they're allowed to do that they weren't allowed to do before.
Yeah.
So that at least they can have some sort of a sexual expression. Now, some of you out there may think, oh, why would you even need that? Well, I don't know. Go 20 years without ever having sex and be in a society where it's very oppressed. You're not allowed to talk about it. You're in high density area where you can be alone amongst 100,000 people and go, stretch it out 10 or 20 years. See what kind of crazy shit you'll do as you begin to go insane from fighting the human condition. All kinds of things will change about your life. All kinds of things will change about your mind. And the mind is, well, what was the term? The mind is a horrible thing
to waste.
A terrible thing to waste. And when you waste away, crazy shit happens. So we have porn that involves not even humans sometimes.
Just objects.
Just objects based on oppression.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting angle to think about.
But and I think if you really were to go even further into that sort of a conversation, you could, with the repression of natural things, you could take that back into even talking about homosexuality.
Absolutely,
the repression.
Absolutely.
Of a normal sexual desire.
Yeah. We've got a whole topic cooking up about people who suffer from conditions of sexual, basically, for lack of a better term, suffers from conditions of sexual needs that cannot be fulfilled. Situations like, we'll save that for another time. But nevertheless, being homosexual and trying to fight that your entire life you will go mad.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
and growing up in a culture that definitively says this is bad.
Yeah.
Anything about this is bad.
And you should feel bad about yourself.
Yeah,
and
you should hate yourself.
Yeah.
You just that's and for me, when he talks about art and expression, one of the reasons I've always been an advocate for gay and lesbian cultures is because that's a prime example of people just trying to find their happy inner existence to be themselves and express themselves and just to be human, their version of a human, and any other art form or any other thing that So going back to that repression thing, it's such a horrible thing that we as humans have been so hell bent on repressing others because of our opinion. And especially when those opinions have been based on things like organized religion.
Yeah. Or any organization, period. Could be government, could be anybody but you is the problem.
Yeah.
Or your group of friends or whatever.
But that's a prime example of that these people have to have a form of expression,
Yeah.
and the tentacle thing. I mean, all of these sort of things. This is it seems so crazy, but you're right. I mean, it's the
result.
It's the result of that repression.
That's it. And so you can't repress people. You'll get weirder stuff.
I
Right?
feel so repressed.
Yeah. You, Glenn, you are repressed. Yes.
Repression.
Definitely.
Let's move to, I think, probably the last section here because we're running a little bit long on this. But you guys had brought it up too, and I was like, damn, I wish I would have thought to write that one, to include that one in my notes here. Performance art. Dancing in particular. I mean, what the hell? Hey, you ever seen Dirty Dancing?
Yep.
It's a terrible movie. But anyway, the point is valid, though. I mean, you damn children, you can't be dancing like that.
Right.
Is that, you ever seen twerking?
That's the devil's.
That's
it's
a devil.
Yeah, and then if you go back into the religious thing, that's where dancing and self-expression are
big time.
extremely
Yeah,
repressed.
They basically, in
That's
this country, they
form.
basically caused that.
Yeah, a form of self-expression and dance. And if you look at like South American cultures, Latin cultures in general, where dance and things are so much more prevalent in the cultural expression.
Yeah.
And it's this nerdy, horrible Christian way of putting everybody in a green suit and standing in line and not saying anything out of character or being a number and a follower and just.
Yeah, and there have been more than a few states, counties, cities based on that were empowered by religious organizations who have literally made dancing illegal in this country. We're talking not long ago, people. That's how far they tried to take it, making dancing in general and music parties illegal.
Well, hey, look at Riverdance, man. That came around because they weren't allowed to continue their cultural dances.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was enforced.
But those weren't sexual in nature, were they?
They weren't sexual in nature,
But
but
they-
it was
okay,
it
got it,
was
yeah.
it was a
Dancing in
curve
general
of
was-
dance
yes.
of expression.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and on the performance art, you can look at things like Elvis.
Yeah, that's what I was
I mean,
going to
look at the
that hip shake.
Oh yeah,
baby.
I mean, when he would when in the early days of his career being on television, they wouldn't pan down to show his waist. It was the upper half of his body. They wouldn't even broadcast his hips.
I did
This
not
is a
know
fully
that.
dressed person,
Because those hips were magic.
right?
Whew.
Got
That-
women pregnant just watching it.
It's the devil made him do it, Bobby.
Right. Yeah.
That dance is the devil.
It's always that's one of the things I always thought was crazy, and that the movie we were talking about, the horrible movie, the dance movie,
Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing. I hated the movie too, but it's crazy to think that something like that would be viewed as such a sin. Such a horrible negative sin, dancing.
Funny.
But it goes back to that seductive thing about overpowering somebody or brainwashing them through a sexy dance or something. And you can take that back as far into culture as you want to in different religions and how they viewed the way women and men interact and the devil and all these other kinds of crazy things.
That was the other one that was terrible. Roadhouse. I knew there was another Patrick Swayze movie. Roadhouse. Every time I hear it now, I think of Peter Griffin and Family Guy. Roadhouse. No, doesn't he say Roundhouse? Anyway, that movie Roadhouse. That was another dancing movie with Patrick Swayze.
Yeah.
This makes me think about belly dancing also.
Well, belly.
It's very
That's very different, but yes.
Sexual in nature, but an art form.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you try and move your belly like that. Tell
Right.
me it's not art.
But it reminds me. Well, a better movie we can use an example of is From Dusk Till Dawn. The scenes where
Dude, I don't
Selma
think
Hayek
I've
is
seen
dancing.
that.
You
told me- I
You
understand.
not.
I know you guys have told me.
Oh my God.
I think this is the third time now you brought, and I actually just rented it. It's coming on my Netflix or whatever. I just
So I'm going to bring. So I'll continue this conversation whether you've seen it or not.
spoilers.
So Selma Hayek is the dancer. That was in her prime for sure. Ooh. And these are vampires, and they would seduce people. And they would bring them into this bar and seduce them, and they would have these super sexy women do these amazing sexy dances that would just suck everybody in, and
like
it was
Austin
a way
Powers,
of controlling them.
Killed the fembots.
A little better than that.
A little better.
A little round, a little nicer body.
Nicer
But
than
it was
Machine Gun Jubbies?
that was the allure and that like seduction that controlled
through
people,
dance.
and that was an evil thing, a spawning of the devil to most religions. And that's a lot of that was a lot of the fight against dancing because of organized religion. We can't seduce people. We can't have any sort of free expression of sex and openly public performance of such a thing.
Those darn sirens.
Right?
listening to their call. Succubi.
Succubus.
Oh, my goodness. All right. So ultimately, we weren't trying to make a point here, I don't think. We just wanted to discuss it. But I think Thomas already hit the nail on the head with this one. The answer to what defines art and pornography, or what classifies what you're looking at as art or pornography, is ultimately completely up to you. However, I don't know. Can we agree to say that if it's meant to make a statement, it's art? If it's meant to represent one thing, explicitly sex, it's porn?
It depends on how you look at it.
That's what she said.
Yeah, I think ultimately it goes back to the viewer. It goes back to your perception. I mean, what I think is pornographic versus, a father of two that's raising them in a Christian household is obviously a million times different.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, it's crazy that I've seen over my lifetime is that repression quality.
Yeah.
That when you repress people, say you've got this holier than thou religious family in America, and they're raising their kids to be righteous and blah blah blah, and they don't show them, they restrict them from all these things. We've seen this over and over and over. You don't show them the reality of life. I'm not saying as a parent you got to teach your kid how to say every bad word by the time they're 5, but I mean the reality of the world and life and the human body and expression and art and dance and feelings and emotions. These are all part of the human existence. And when you decide through some sort of a classification of either government or religion or some other social binding body that this is where this is good and this is bad, that's, again, like we said about so many things, that's your opinion. And you're repressing people that do things that are natural. Sex is natural. Being naked is natural.
When you repress those things, the individual that is being repressed will fight harder to achieve those denied realities.
And express it out. And we've talked about this before when, just like drinking. You tell your kids, you can't drink. Well, you're 21, you can drink.
And now it's okay. So now they're going to just go overboard, and you end up with a bunch of teens that are dying drunk driving because they've never been exposed to it.
Yeah, or rebel against you sooner just because you're telling them they can't.
Well, that rebellion, and then that there's also that need of like, well, you told me I couldn't do it, so now I'm going to do it in excess.
That's rebellion.
Until I'm hurt. Yeah.
Right.
And it goes to that extreme a lot of times, whether it's sexual, drinking, drug usage, or anything.
I wish I could do sex in excess.
No, you do not.
No, I do not. Well, we'll leave you to wonder about why Glenn said that.
Dude. I'll save that for later.
Nice. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Show notes and other info can be found at our website, greatdistraction.com. The Great Distraction is listed in iTunes, and we greatly appreciate it when our listeners take the time to look us up and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps our show grow and motivates us to continue producing content. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do so using the email address, greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com, or via our website. We're always interested in hearing any thoughts, comments, or questions from our listeners. Keeping up on the latest from us can be done in several different ways. You can add us to your favorite RSS feed tracker. The link is available on our website or in iTunes. Or you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Great Distraction, one word, no space. As always, thank you for listening, and thank you for all the support.